welcome to overanalyzing every single Land of the Lustrous chapter. Spoilers for the entire thing, because I will be relating the beginning to the end and everything in between. Um, the I've only read up to the 105 because that's all that's out at the time of recording. So if anything really drastic happens in the next couple of chapters that I don't get to relate any of the beginning stuff to, let me know down in the comments. And let me know if you think I got anything wrong, or if you interpret something differently, or if you've noticed something that I don't even notice, because I just want to really overanalyze every single panel of this series because it's so crazy how much you can get just foreshadowing rise from like every single chapter. I'm gonna make a anyway. There's just such goodness, but let's start with the cover of the volumes. Now, you may not know this if you haven't seen the full cover arts of the uh, books, but Cinnabar is actually in all of the covers, but cropped out of every single cover like page. Uh, like the cover ends right here, and Cinnabar's right there. Poor thing. Um, so I kind of think that with this first volume cover, we have Congo like off by himself, and in a way, we also have Cinnabar like off by themselves on the other side. And what I notice here is that like Cinnabar is kind of like falling on the other side, and all the other characters are like, cool. Anyway, I think that Cinnabar has like a reverse foil relationship with Foss. So it's like uh the thing where Foss is getting most of the attention, but Cinnabar is the one who is separated from the gems and is more like in the background. And later that becomes Foss in the Gem Society. So it's just so interesting how that all relates. As far as this just being all the characters mainly introduced in the chapter, that's pretty much it. But I wanted to recognize that Congo is clearly separated from all the other gems. Uh, and that's definitely like a thing later. Uh, Especially with like the stuff discussing about how like Congo is like lonely because he's more powerful or something, and the themes that are represented later. Anyway, let's jump in with actually this page. So for this first page, one thing that I noticed is that you don't get to see any of their eyes. Well, technically, if you ignore that one, but like you don't get to see any of the. Sorry for the shaky camera. I keep bumping things. Anyway, you don't get to see any of the characters' eyes uh, through here. And a part of me thinks that this could be from the fact of like in the lore book, which I need to finish, but I read all the gem parts of this part. So in the lore book, it actually talks about how the like characteristics that make up the gems, like actual gem part of them, like affect their personalities. And so what I think this could be is it could just be that like showing the like shininess of the gems, and because even more right here. Um, but this could also just show that like these gems' personalities reflect like what their gem looks like or what their gem is like. And then you go over to this first page, and again, like the first eyes that you see, ignoring the character page, is Foss's eyes. And Foss's eyes aren't covered, like they're covered by this. They're not even covered by the strands of grass. Foss's like crystal part is getting morphed in with the grass, but their eyes are clear, and Foss's eyes are the focus of this part and not their gem. And I think that that's really cool because it kind of shows that like Foss is really different from the gem that they personality wise from the gem that makes them up. And the lore book talks about that because it says that Foss is an enigma or something. There's just something different about Foss that makes them their personality is completely opposite to the material that makes them up as. And in most cases, the material that the gems are made of affects their personality. So Foss being the opposite, really, I think the hair being in all the characters' faces showing their gem is what this is indicating, with Foss's eyes being out. Foss's eyes being out. Anyway, another thing I wanted to say here for this page is that with the if sun or halo thing being behind Congo kind of reflects the panel at the end of 105 where Foss is standing in front of the sun and the sun is just right behind them. And this is kind of giving that same effect. And this is the like very first shot of Congo in the books. And another thing I wanted to show here is that all of the characters are kind of lined up with their partners, except for Cinnabar, who doesn't have one. Sad. Who else? Actually, yeah, there's no character here because there are characters who don't have partners. Oh, well, I guess Red Barrel's here. Okay, right? That's Red Barrel. Okay, yeah. So there's a character that Few switched out because Peridot's not here. For some reason, Red Barrel's there instead of Peridot. But for the most part, each of the characters like partners are on the other side, except for Cinnabar. And Cinnabar's the only one who doesn't have a sword, kind of like indicating that like Cinnabar and Foss are the only ones who don't really have a good role in the society. And fighting like with all the characters holding swords is seen as like a really prestigious position, you know. But not like all the other characters aren't even important. I mean, it's kind of interesting that even Red Barrel is holding. Also, I don't know how to pronounce all their names. Red Berry, Red. I don't know. It's one of those. I don't know how to pronounce their names. Anyway, they're the only one. They're also holding a sword, and They aren't even a fighter. So it's just interesting to see that. Um, and of course, Foss is under Congo, and it's in contrast to Cinnabar, who's still lined up with the gems, but Foss is specifically under Congo. Of course, that could show that like Foss is kind of being more protected by Congo or something like that. And Foss isn't holding a sword. Foss is holding the like notebook clipboard thingy. Um, and I what this also indicates to me is I also it also indicates like a greater connection with Congo that I think is explored way later, like with Foss sort of becoming like the new Congo later down the line. Um, and so I don't know if I'm reading too much into that, but I feel like they Ichikawa purposely put Foss closer to Congo in these shots because unlike Cinnabar, Cinnabar is still a part of the gems, but Foss becomes something more, you know? Now, with Foss disintegrating into the blades of grass, it's kind of like how Foss does in the later chapters once all the gems are gone, because Foss sort of plops over and then like Earth sort of builds around them because they just stay there. And I think it's the same thing as that because it's like how long would have Foss stayed there if no one called out to them, like with the little pebble in there, and that's exactly what Foss is thinking about. When Foss falls over and just gets consumed by dirt for who knows how many years, is Foss thinks about these, but Foss doesn't remember exactly, and that's why the black panels in that one chapter. Again, I'm bad with chapter numbers, but those black panels in those chapters are the beginning because Foss is trying to remember this. And it also could be maybe like a hope that someone will call out to Foss, considering that this is the first time. Um, so, the Morg calls out to Foss. It's the first time we see Foss, and we see that like all the gems are so close. Like they're all close here. Like they're all just like even though if they get too close to each other they break, but they're also close to each other, like proximity wise. And so here, like there's close over there. Morg kind of stays back because Morg remembers about Foss, but look at the distance like between Morg and Foss here. It's so different compared to the characters here, and it just shows like that something's different about Foss. Not only the fact that like all the other characters, their hair is hiding their eyes, kind of making also adding to the uniform effect of like the gems. But then you get to hear in Foss, you see Foss's eyes, and Foss is so distant from the rest of the gems. There's just this line here, you know. So then we kind of get over here, and one thing I noticed with these panels is that it's very clear that either I think it reflects both of this. The gems look down on Foss, and Foss looks up to the gems. So Morg and Foss are talking, and Morg is actively having to talk down, and that's just because of the position of the scene. It's not anything like that, but like it also fits thematically with what's happening here because Foss is like talking about how they're finally going to get a job, and Morg is like, "You still haven't gotten a job yet." But Foss is still very confident in themselves, which is something we like to see. But Foss is like, "Oh, it's my great potential." But another thing that I recognized here is that Foss really compliments like uh, every gem. Like Foss is like, "Oh, even someone as great as you," and I think some that comes from Foss idolizing the position that the other gems are in, but also recognizing that they view themselves as lesser than everyone else, and showing that they put everyone else in a higher pedestal because they have a job and they do fit in with society and all those sorts of things. Um, and then, of course, Foss here like kind of criticizes Morgan Goshen for going after like us a Lunarian or like, the black spot by themselves. But that is something that Foss does later. I don't remember what chapter, but whenever Foss is like, oh, we can handle this like black spot, and Ghost is like, shouldn't we report it to Sensei? It's like that sort of thing where it's like Foss right here says like, oh, you have an ego here, but it's not something that Foss recognizes in themselves later. Um, I'm also sorry if I talk fast because I do that. You can put me slower on the YouTube play. Anyway, so here again, like you see that they're looking back at Foss, and Foss is again put lower in the frame, and it's just shows that like again that Foss looks up to them. Like this is a very like look up position. Well, because Foss is on the ground, but it shows that visually. And then we see that Foss finally gets up after they leave, and Foss says they act like they're so busy, and this kind of like indicates the whole thing of like not that Foss is lazy, but Foss isn't busy because they don't have a job. Like understandable, but like I bet Foss wishes like that Foss criticizing them in this way is Foss wishing that Foss was busy and everything like that. Um, and so here we see this hurts me, like rereading it because that's something that I didn't really get until later. But Foss here is like, well, this is one of the first like times we get to see Foss alone. Foss here is like fixing their hair, like making sure they look nice, and then they stand up and they get this ripple effect, and people say that um this is like Foss, like showing that there's going to be ripples later, or Foss won't look exactly like this. And Foss is complimenting themselves in the mirror, just like saying that they're perfect, saying that they're cute, saying that they're gallant. Of course, like the different translations translate this differently, but it's just the fact of that Foss is so like happy with how they look and like a little bit of who they are. Like, of course, we know that they have reservations about the fact that they're so weak and brittle, but they are in this moment. They're happy with who they are and how they look, and that hurts so much later. Um, this actually wasn't a thing that I noticed until I started reading Attack on Titan and talking to my friend who loves Attack on Titan about it. I also only read Attack on Titan because I wanted to compare Foss to Eren, but one thing that happens in Attack on Titan, sorry, minor spoilers, not really big spoilers, but one thing that happens in Attack on Titan is Eren Yeager gets less like his hair gets longer. He becomes like less unkept just because it becomes less important to him, and that's what my friend was pointing out that he was taking care of himself less. And I was like, oh, that kind of happens with Foss, like in a weird way. But you know how like Foss later, like doesn't care about getting repaired and doesn't care about like how they look to other gems and all that. And it shows right here how devastating that is because they did care at one point. They did care about their appearance. And oh, anyway, um, so Foss comes over, excuse me, yes. And this thing right here, the little like, I know that there's a word for that thing, but I don't remember what that is. But this little like floof from the like flower that was here actually, it's still in their hair. But this is supposed to represent Foss in the later scene that was changed when Foss was walking down the corridor to Sensei and then asked him to break. Uh, Also, I like switch between Sensei, Kongo, Adamant for Kongo like all the time, so that all the same person. Anyway, so um, like this is supposed to bring Foss, like young Foss, like the first time we see Foss, like that is supposed to like connect it to here, with what was changed. I think I also do prefer like Foss looking at the younger Foss. It's just such a more emotional reaction. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in the manga scans, it was showed young Foss walking through the corridor in that scene. In the official volume release, it's just the like this little seed thing, and Foss tries to grab it, and Foss doesn't. And so it kind of shows that Foss is trying to remember them the first time that we see them in the series, their original self, and they just can't. Whereas it's a more emotional reaction when you see actual Foss, but it doesn't make sense lore wise because Foss will have no idea what they looked like at the beginning. Um, so and I want to talk about here because again, it shows Kongo like here and Foss lower in the frame, but of course that shows that Foss is looking at Kongo. Again, Foss looks up to Kongo. I'm not sure. I don't think that this is the same interpretation of Kongo looking down. I think it's just supposed to show the height difference. Because for the first time in the chapter, we get to see Phos at the center of the frame here. And I think this is like a thing of like Congo actually respecting. I think I just touched my mic if the audio went weird there. Anyway, sorry. But I think this is supposed to show that Congo has like a more neutral like Congo doesn't think less than of Voss, despite their condition, is what I is trying to go with that. You might interpret that differently, but just because this is Voss like firstly in the frame, it's also the first time we hear their full name, I guess. So it could be that as well. And of course, I found a job for you. Voss is thinking about fighting. Voss is thinking about joining Morg and Goshen. Just pointed at Goshen for more. Anyway, um, and then we have fighting. Now, one thing that I want to say, like this is just fight scene stuff like that. I don't really have much to say about the fight scene itself. But one thing I want to say about Morgan Goshen is that like they make such a strong impression on you the first time they're introduced, and they don't have many scenes after this. But man, it hit me when Foss woke up after and Goshen and Morg were gone, like Goshen, new Morg, and even though like there's not that much, like their characters aren't seen that much after this, a few more scenes and stuff like that, but it just hurt me in the fact that like these were the first characters we saw and we don't even get to see their death, and the fact that like it's not even something that you think about happens, it just made it feel so much more sudden, just because these were the first characters that we saw, the first characters we actually got to see battle. uh, and it's one of those things of like they made such a strong impact where it's like, yeah, these characters were cool. If we got more screen time with them, I would be like, I'd be like, cool. I'd like to know more about these characters. And the fact that when they died and when they were not died, when they were taken to the moon with like no warning, and we didn't even get to see their death, that was like it just slowly came to me upon reading the fact that they were gone, that like we wouldn't get any more screen time with them, we wouldn't get to know more about them, and that's what I thought. Like even though they were such minor characters, I was like, wow, that really hit me in that way, just the fact that like these characters that had so much potential were gone. Anyway, fight scene, Lunarians. We know that these crystals now aren't, in fact, parts of the person who were taken, and they're just fakes. So sad. Anyway, um, again, I don't really have much to say about the cutscenes. Let me know if you guys in the comments have anything to say about these specific cutscenes. I do love the art of how they're drawn, like with this stuff. But again, um, and so then they give you the lore of like, oh, that's like one of their friends with the color and stuff, and that they're gonna take back every piece. So here we have Congo looking down at Foz, and I believe, let me know if you interpret this differently. I believe this part is Foss uh showing like showing how like Foss will get distorted later on is kind of how I interpret it. I'm realizing that I've been talking about this for 18 minutes, but we roll. I thought this would be like a 6-minute video, but I have so much to talk about. Okay, here. Okay, I'm not reading the book, I'm just telling you what I got out of it. For this part, I have this like wild theory that I don't think is correct, but let me know if you think it's interesting or if you think that it relates. So this part, Foss is talking about the whole lore of the beginning of the story. I was thinking that, like, specifically 6 planets, right? Or, sorry, not 6 planets. 6 moons came to destroy Earth. 6 meteors. I'm mixing myself up. 6 meteors hit Earth. Those pieces of Earth became the moon. What my thought process was rereading this, is, does the Earth kind of represent Foss in a way? Because Foss loses like 6 pieces of themselves. Foss loses both legs, they lose both arms, they lose their head, and they lose their eye. Of course, then they lose their other eye later. But anyway, so they lose 6 parts. So I'm wondering if like the Earth is also some sort of metaphor for Foss's transformation. Could be wrong. Let me know if you think it's interesting in the comments. But that's something that I thought, is that like these 6 like organs, no, limbs, legs, arms, head, eye. Like, of course, again, Foss loses their other eye later, so that kind of ruins it. But like 6 pieces broken from Earth affect Foss, and that's just something I thought was interesting, just with the like chunks of Earth being reformed and taken to the and turning into the moons, kind of like how those pieces of Foss were taken to the moon and never seen again, or those sort of things. So that's just something that I thought was interesting. There's also this part where, it talks about, like, they escape to the Earth, the blah 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 blah. The Lestresses, the lore. Anyway, was there anything else I had? Um, One thing I wanted to note here is that, like, this is like the first shot in the chapter where Foss is sort of aligned with all the other gems as like a collective. They are all the Lestresses, and so that's like the first time where it's seen as like Foss is a part of them. But Foss in this frame isn't going towards the action. Again, Foss is the only one who doesn't have a sword on them. It shows that even though they are with the gems, they aren't the same, if that makes sense. This still bugs me. Anyway, the 28 of us, I counted several times. There's 26 of them. Even the lore book says that there's 26 of them. Who is the like other two of the 28? I don't know. If Congo is in, I think even with Congo included, it's 26. So let me know if you know the history of the 28. But as far as I've seen, no one knows why it says 28 here. It could just be characters that aren't named or listed, or characters that recently went to the moon. That's kind of like how I interpret it. Maybe they're still counting people who just like went up to the moon. But still, you count both Amethyst. You could technically maybe count Ghost and Karagorm as two. I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce Karagorm's name. Anyway, and then that would get you to 27, but I don't know who the 28th is. Okay? Anyway, there's also this thing of like some people were saying that they didn't really understand the two roles thing, but I think his role speech right here really indicates the importance of jobs here because he says that everyone has a one role or maybe two. It shows that like everyone is very adamant about the roles, and then Congo talks about how Foss has tried to have a role, has just failed at all of them. Um, and I really like this. I wish this was in the anime. It's kind of in the 2D trailer. Um, so now I want to pay attention to Foss's eyes and how the clipboard covers Foss. Like this is sort of like an insult to Foss right here. But nothing can go through your impenetrable strata of inept. And this clipboard kind of like covers them from that like realization. Sort of Congo like giving them like a reason, giving them a role to not be inept about it or something. Um this kind of hurts me now. Then I should just go fight maybe. This could just be interpreted of Foss being like, then give me like the last job that I haven't had, but it could also be interpreted of as Foss just being like, uh, let me be inept in like something I want to be, or it could just be Foss being like, if I'm gonna be useless, might as well be fighting or something like that. Uh, anyway, then Congo says like, fight, you say, and this is like the first time like it kind of sees that he's looking down a bit, but that couldn't be like what Congo actually views Foss as. This could just be Foss's interpretation of it. Like, Foss is like, oh, he's looking down at me. He doesn't think I'm capable. When it's just because Congo knows that Foss can't, and Congo wants to, protect Foss. Um, well, this is the one thing I've never tried, even once. This is something that Foss really wants to do. And I think because Foss really looks up to the people who fight. That's something that Foss really looks up to. And so here, is this the one thing you will never do? And it really emphasizes you will never do. And I think this relates to the like, is Foss at the end? Because when Foss is actually able to fight, is that even this Foss? Like, what is you here? You obviously is talking to Foss, but it could also be you will never do it in your current state. The Foss that Foss is now, and I think that kind of leads into Foss trying to anything to be able to fight, because if they can't do the one thing they want to do, like, then they'll try anything, What's giving up your legs? Of course, it's not something they actually choose, but it's something that they get to think about later because they won't do it the way they are right now, so they have to change, and that's why they have such a strong desire for change. Then this is Congo snapping a bit of himself, dispersing the Lunarians. I kind of think Foss kind of looking at the Lunarians. It's like Foss being really fascinated about them and like really thinking about like why. I could be reading way too into that, so let me know. Anyway, then Congo gets mad at Morg and Peoples for not following his orders. I I'm actively rereading it, making these videos, but I feel like I remember like Congo yelled at Foss like once or something. Like Congo's yelled at Foss a bit for how stupid Foss has been, which he kind of does here. But he always, I feel like he always like babies Foss in a way. Like I think he has more pity for Foss for some things, just because Foss doesn't have a role, and I think he really like is saddened by that. Anyway, then Foss breaks. I remember people saying that because if Foss is conscious in this state, Foss was conscious all throughout when they were packed into boxes all over the island, which is horrifying to think about. It's just so sad. Like it's kind of like, does that mean that the gems are conscious when they're smothered into dust then too? Like it's incredibly like distressing to think about that. Anyway, so you were remarkably bitter. He puts on his gloves. In the lore book, it says that he actually doesn't need the gloves in order to protect the gems, but he does it for a sense of unity with the other gems. So then we get lore, hardness. Um, he says that these are the 3 points why like Foss will never be able to fight. And again, that shows that like he's like, you're gonna fix that you have to, in order for Foss to get what they want, in order for Foss to fight, they're gonna have to fix their hardness of 3.5. They're gonna have to stop falling apart so easily. And they're gonna be able, they have to fix that they're a light green color that affects that attracts Lunarians. So he's saying that these things that aren't really problems, he's telling Foss that these are the 3 things that are holding Foss back from fighting. And so keeping that in mind for the rest of the story, like that, those are the things Foss fixes about themselves so that they can get to their goal. Um, I don't know who this gem is. That's another thing. I'm sure it was a gem I recognized when the anime adapted it, but let me know if you know which gem this is. Anyway, and then they talk about how, like the Foss's new assignments. You will be preserving the present and preparing us against the foreseen future. It is an intellectual task that is both vital and creative in nature. Foss thinks it's boring and stuff like that. But one thing I want to say about this task is that it's preserving the present and preparing against the unforeseen future. Foss is the complete opposite of this. Because Foss does not preserve their present self. They actively seek out change. And that is completely against what the encyclopedia is for. And so it's kind of interesting to think about if Foss stuck with the encyclopedia just recording the present. It also shows that Foss doesn't have any respect for that. Foss doesn't see the purpose of preserving themselves as they are. And of course, as we get later in the story, like Foss is completely different from they are at the beginning, and them rejecting the encyclopedia job really shows that they don't care about their present situation. And they don't care about knowing their present self. Like when they forget memories of their past, like we see Antark be really possessive over their memories over Congo because they don't want to lose that part of them. Meanwhile, Foss isn't as protective over their memories. Anyway, just observation, talking about that. Anyway, and then they're talking about how Foss is the only one who can talk back to Sensei, and I think this really just shows like their rebellious nature from the very beginning, which does kind of stick through the entire series. Um, and then Congo likes this because he says that Foss will be an honest record, because this might be something that Congo is saddened about, that he kind of feels like he's lying to the gems about some things, like just about like who he is. And him saying "I'm counting on you" when no one says it, I think it's Congo wants there to be change with his relationship with the gems, and he's hoping that Foss will do that, which Foss does, in the worst way possible. But this is also kind of like when Euclid went up to Congo with the like sheets of paper, and I think that's what that like weird visual style during that part where Euclid sort of becomes the leader is about. Whereas like Congo's being covered by the papers and then he grabs it and lets it go. Like I think it's supposed to be representing like him wanting to be uncovered or wanting things to be out in the open. And I think when there's the same like paper covering like Euclid when Euclid becomes the leader, and I think it's to show that they want no secrets. Um, so with this scene, I didn't expect this video to be this long. Anyway, they're talking about how they can bring back. This is more lore stuff that was given to us in just the first chapter. Of they can revive people who are broken up. You guys know the story, you know. Anyway, this is also where the framing kind of changes, where Foss really is incorporated in the scene. Like before, I talked about how like Foss was put lower than the gems. This kind of just shows that Foss is kind of like observing. Uh, Foss kind of has the same facial expression throughout all these too, but it also shows that like Foss is inept and really wants to help. Foss wants to help. Foss wants to find a purpose, but they are kind of fed up with not being recognized. And that's something we see in the other thing is that like Foss really just wants to be recognized by the gems and like have a role and say that they're useful. And I think that this relates back to when they're talking with Cinnabar the last time Cinnabar and Foss talk. Because Foss has a negative view of wanting to help people, like later in the story. Because Foss sees that people only care if Foss can benefit them. Obviously, like that isn't exactly how people are, but that's Foss's view of it. So Foss talking to Cinnabar about how like the only reason that the characters are friends with Cinnabar is because Cinnabar is bringing value to them, which might be true, but Foss sees it in a negative light. Uh, because Foss knows like how people reject them and don't really respect them if they contribute nothing to society, which makes sense, but Foss is actively trying to do that, and it's very sad. Anyway, so then we talk about the microscopic organisms that you know are like humans, um, and how that it's a temporary death. But one thing is that like for all the characters they come back the same, but like with Foss, like it says later that every time Foss breaks, like tiny bits are never recovered. And so it kind of means that when every time Foss is broken, even in the beginning, like they're slowly losing parts of themselves. With other characters, that might not be the case because they're of higher hardness. Anyway, uh, so here, like they try to go back, and then Foss is kind of like this. I kind of see as like Foss being like, I want more attention, I want more recognition for what I did because I brought Congo and Congo saved you, sort of thing. Because Foss wants to be praised for being useful, for helping them. And then they get into a argument. Yeah. I will not be refused. All that. This is kind of funny. Make you their head hardness the same as their physical hardness. Um, so Foss is crediting that Foss saved both of them. They would both be on the moon right now. This is actually kind of interesting. I just got this now. I didn't think about it then. But Foss says that because Foss alerted Sensei to them and Sensei saved them, they weren't taken to the moon. You know what happens when Foss sleeps? They get taken to the moon. So that's something I just pointed out myself. But like, Foss is the reason they don't get taken at the beginning of the story. When Foss, because of Foss's decisions, when Foss is sleeping for like 220 years, they get taken. And Foss actually regrets that they said that, like, if they weren't sleeping, they could have saved him. And this could probably call back to here the fact that Foss credits that they saved them by getting Congo. Uh, when they wake up and they're gone, Foss Foss taking this responsibility here also means that they failed to do it later. Anyway, and then Foss is like, I want a cooler job. Goshen's like, this is I think this shocked face on Foss right here is the first time Foss is actually getting some sort of recognition from them. Like, Goshen is like, your new job helped us out before you even started. So this is kind of like Goshen saying that, like, I don't know, I think your job's kind of cool. It's kind of great that you have a role now, and that you are, you're actively like uh contributing now. Or Goshen has a like more positive view of Foss now that they have a role. And this is why Foss has this shocked face and kind of gets a little flustered because they uh have never been like complimented in this way for their work. Um and then Goshen, jokingly like, want to switch with me. And so even though this could be like the first time like Foss is actually getting some contentness of where they are, but of course, then they're like, no, I'm gonna sort of joke about it, and then they take the sword. Uh, so here, and this is because their desire to fight, their desire to be like Goshen and Morg, these great people that Foss keeps complimenting. Uh, this is uh, this is what like really prompts them to fight. Like it shows that they just really want to fight. Tatakaya, to relate more to Eren Yeager. Um, there's Foss is scared, and this is also shows that Foss can't fight because Sensei could say that Foss can't fight, and we'd be like, no, but we could see that Foss can't even hold the sword because it's too heavy, stuff like that. Now here, their encyclopedia like notebook thingy saves them from the blow that Wood is going to break them again. I'm wondering if this is foreshadowing. This could be overstretching it to when Foss loses their head because Foss gets a shot straight from above that hurts their neck. And there isn't anything to help them in that case. Here, of course, this is Foss's doing. The reasons why this is all happening is because of Foss. You could say the same for the other case. And again, tell me if you disagree. Anyway, it's very interesting here because you can see that Foss's head would be broken in this case from a up blow, but them having a role in society, them having a purpose, because that's what this represents, saves them from that. Uh, uh, they all kind of joke about it, and then them all making jabs at Foss of like how the only reason Rutile doesn't want Foss to get injured is because then they'll have to like put Foss back together again. And then, Goshen's sorry about it, but Morg, is like joking about it as like wanting Foss to get hit. And this kind of just shows like it's in a joking sense here, but it shows that they really don't care that much about Foss, and Foss knows that. And that's when we get this last panel of you are my only friend, looking at the encyclopedia, the thing that gives them purpose, the things that gives them a job. And this sets up everything in the show. Another thing that I might have forgot to mention, but like the shots with Foss and Congo, like that are more where Foss is more in frame. Of course, Congo's still taller, so it's more like that. But it also shows like I think like foreshadows a connection between Foss and Congo, especially the fact of Foss being shown as different than the other gems. It it sets up at the very beginning that Foss is an outsider of the gems, and technically Congo is too. The gems don't see it that way. And then, chapter 2, which I'll do in the next video. I'm surprised that this video took so long, but I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you if you watched the entire video. Please leave a comment if you recognize something that I didn't. And I'll be happy to hear. Oh, actually, one more thing. One more thing. This is gonna be a long video, I'm sorry. But one thing with the Earth that they live on, the little island that they live on, I remember some people were confused about the physics in the show, just with like how some characters can be flung like around, all that. I'm trying to get to the specific one. I guess here, yeah. I can also show this one. But the gravity is actually different because of the pieces of Earth that were chipped away. The gravity is weird. So that's like explaining the physics aspect that is never really explained. Also, all the characters are really heavy, so the gravity is like less than our gravity. So that explains why these chunks of diamond can move so easily. It's because the gravity is less, and it explains like how they can somewhat mimic like human like movement is because they would be really heavy if they actually existed. But anyway, this lore book talks about that gravity changes. So this book, man, I'm gonna make a video about this too. Anyway, this is an awesome book. All right, Land of the Lustrous, super good. Thank you for watching this entire thing. I'm gonna try to do every single chapter. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I hope you have a wonderful week. And my name's Reason, by the way, but you don't have to know that. See ya.